Okay, so unfinished wine. Like, seriously, does that ever happen to somebody? Yes, it does. Sometimes you buy this amazing bottle of wine, and then you decide to break up with your date. And then you have unfinished wine. I don't know how it happens, but it does happen. And we've got our 101 wine time with Hilarie Larson again. She is a sommelier and also a wine educator and co-owner of North Winds Wine Consulting. She's one of our Big Blend expert food, wine, and travel writers and radio contributors. And I'm glad to have her back on the show to tell us about a problem that Nancy and I on Big Blend Radio never have a problem with, which is leftover wine. But go to her website, northwindswineconsulting.com. Hilarie, do you ever really have leftover wine? Seriously, is this a myth?
No, I do sometimes. It does happen. We'll open a bottle of, say, white wine, and we'll each have a glass, and then we go, I think let's go on to open that red over there. So we've got maybe a third or half of a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
It's perfectly good wine, but we just want to save it and drink it the next day. So, yes, it can happen, even in the best wine households.
Actually, I will be honest, Nancy, and I've had that time, and it's just like, okay, I don't feel like any more of that. It's like, yeah, it is more of like I want to change flavors at this point. It's like it's a movement on. But sometimes, yeah, you what happens when you really do get that really special bottle of wine, and then all of a sudden it's like you think you're going to, you do plan that romantic night, and then it's like something interrupts it. Like, you're dating a doctor, and the guy, like, has to go deliver a baby, and then you're sitting there, and you go, am I going to be nice and save the wine for when he comes home, or I'm going to sit and drink it out on the patio and look at the stars and go, he's delivering a baby, and I can just take this time and wine all to myself. Then you go like, oh, I'll be nice. It depends on where you are in your relationship, I suppose. But what happens with the really good bottle, like you got a really good Mourvedre that you just you've brought it in from Chile or Argentina, and it's like one of these amazing wines, and then it's like, uh-oh. Because sometimes things happen.
That's right. Well, we've talked about this before, how oxygen can be the enemy of your wine. And if you leave wine exposed to too much oxygen for too long a period of time, it'll start to break the wine down and it will go off. So what you want to do is remove that oxygen that's in the bottle. So if you just take the cork and put it back in the bottle and leave your wine on the counter, it might last for a day, but if you take that bottle of wine and you remove the oxygen out of the bottle and put it in your fridge, it'll last much longer. Maybe, 1 to 3 days for a white and 4 or 5 days for a red, depending on the particular grape variety. And there are quite a few tools you'll find out there if you start looking online at all the little wine gizmos and things. There are several products out there that say that they will protect your wine. You can get cans of argon gas that you spritz in, and that pushes the oxygen out of the bottle and leaves a protective blanket of argon over the top of the wine that's still in the bottle. Pardon?
Like when you hear that, to me now we're putting chemicals in our wine. Is that okay? Like, how do you get rid of that? Like that freaks me out a little bit.
It's not a chemical. It's just an inert, tasteless gas, but it's just in a slightly higher concentration because it's in this can.
Okay.
So, and it's not an aerosol can really. It looks almost like, when you buy WD-40 and it's got that little straw. They come with those little straws. So you spray just a spritz of that in, and it forms this protective layer over top the wine. And then that will keep it protected for a couple of days. But eventually it will just dissipate. It'll just blow off. Another one that I like and that we use at home is, and I've used it at a lot of wineries too, is a system called Vacuvan. And they're these little rubber corks with a top and a plunger, and you put the cork thing in the top of the bottle, you put the plunger over the top, and you just move it up and down, and then it sucks all the air out of the bottle, and it lets you know when all the air is out of the bottle by making clicking sounds. And it seals it up really nice and tight so you can lay the bottle on its side in your fridge, because Let's face it, most of us don't have shelves that are tall enough for the bottle to stand up. So you can lay it down. You don't have to worry about it leaking, and that will keep your wine nice and fresh for several days, and even longer if it's a red.
I mean,
so if you remove the oxygen and keep it cool.
So when you look at this bottle and you say, okay, I got this amazing bottle of wine, I'm going to save this, do you go, I'm going to save you, but I'm going to suck the oxygen right out of you?
I am. And even if I'm tired and I just want to brush my teeth and go to bed, I'm in the kitchen just pumping all that oxygen out of the bottles. It's good exercise.
I know it's weird because you're saving it, but you're sucking the oxygen out of it. This is interesting. I never, because some people go the leftover wine they're using for cooking, and I go okay, now where are we with that? That's a whole other thing. Do we use,
my goodness.
Uh-oh.
I remember, yes, I have heard horror stories, people telling me that, oh, yes, we had this wonderful bottle of wine, and we liked it so much, and we didn't finish it, so I put it beside the stove to use it in cooking, and I said, oh, that was wonderful, so you used it in a couple of days. What did you make? She said, oh, no, dear, it was so good I couldn't use it. It's still sitting there. That was been 5 years.
No, then
and I didn't have the heart to tell her. Yeah, it's
the syrup
past vinegar even.
Oh yeah, because now there's like a vinegar or a syrup thing like you're talking about. I know we've talked about this on the show before about this white wine that just was like a syrup. So others will go vinegar because also the heat. Isn't the heat bad too for it?
Yes,
even
the heat
vinegar
is bad.
I don't keep near the stove.
No, and sometimes you'll see these beautiful kitchens, and they have the little wine racks built in beside the refrigerator or, beside the stove. And those are the worst places you can keep your wine because it gets really hot. I mean, once wine gets to be over 82 degrees, it starts to break down. It'll age 4 times faster than it's supposed to. And if it gets over 90 degrees, it actually starts to cook. So, imagine what some of those wines go through. Not a pleasant experience.
Now, if it becomes vinegary, now would you use that in a salad dressing? Honestly, I mean, how do you know, or does that go bad, at that point?
It does go bad. It's usually bacterial spoilage that will make it develop that vinegary smell. And also, if it's exposed to a lot of air, you might find that the wine, even if you've done your preservation method and you've put it in your fridge, if you bring it out and it smells sort of vinegary or like apple cider vinegar, something like that, and especially if when you pour it in your glass, you notice that it's got a bit of browning, then it's most likely oxidized. So very similar to when you cut an apple in half, it starts to turn brown because of it breaks down, starting to break down from the oxygen contact. That's exactly what is taking place with the wine. So, and there's not much
Drink
you can
your
do
wine,
about
people.
that. Just
it's like
drink it up quickly.
Yeah.
The preservation methods aren't meant to last for long periods of time. They're just a stopgap so that you can enjoy it over the next day or so after you originally opened it.
See, because it does that oxygen. You want that oxygen so it breathes, which you've taught us about, and at the same time you don't want it to have too much. It's that balance. So it is about open it up, let it have some air, and then start sipping, not too fast, and then don't let it go for 2 days, no matter what you do. So I like the method you were talking about. What would that tool be called to suck out the oxygen that you're talking about? The
brand name is called Vacuvin, Vacuvin. But there are also other companies that make very similar things. So you just want to look for sort of the little special rubber corks and the plunger attachment, and you use the two of them together, and it's not very expensive, and you use them over and over. I've had some I've been using for decades. So they're very cost-effective. That's kind of like how you get the beer,
like Grolsch and stuff like that. It's kind of like that, and not like it traps it really well. Like it seals in, but I know you're sucking the oxygen out. But like those little things that just snap on and Yeah, I know what you. This will sound provocative just now if I keep going, so I'm not going to keep going. I'm like, here, it's a snap-on tool for wine. But anyway, so what about if you're going to cook with wine? I mean, I'm weird about this. Like, I think when we make cocktails and stuff, there's people who say, "Oh, don't use the best because you're just making a cocktail and mixing it with things." And I don't really agree with that all the time. I think it depends on what you're making. And I think it's going to be the same in cooking, but maybe I'm really wrong. Maybe I'm a bad cook. That is probably really true.
Well, I'm a firm. I would agree with you, and I'm a firm believer that if I wouldn't drink it, I won't cook with it. So, it doesn't have to be your very best quality wine. It doesn't have to be expensive. But it should be a sound wine without faults and flaws. And then, yes, then that's what you should put in. Because you wouldn't drink a nasty-smelling bottle of wine that was, spoiled. So why would you put it in your food?
Yeah, and that's the smelly thing is a big deal. We have to watch that. You do need to smell because and it's so weird. We've done all these interviews over the years with chefs and wine experts like you, and there's always this thing about smell. And then we interviewed a lady the other day on home design, and she refurbishes furniture and all this. I'm like, well, what's the first thing? How do you know if it's like, good furniture or bad furniture that you're going to restore? She goes, I smell it. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. So basically, we are all walking around the world smelling everything, what we put on our mouths, what we put in our house. But it seems like smell has become the big thing that we need to all do. But like with wine, that's part of, isn't that kind of like the training of knowing what is good wine, like wine that's like healthy, and sick wine at that point? You have to learn that difference between the wine because there's always that weird musky kind of vibe to it when it's not good.
Well, yeah, there are, even good wines can go rogue, can go bad. And it can happen through problems during the making of the wine or the shipping of it, the storage of it. A lot of things can go wrong along the way. And I think what you might be thinking of is when somebody tries a wine and says, oh, I'm sending that wine back because it's corked. And we hear that, and people say, well, what does that mean, corked? Lots of wines have corks in them. What does that mean? Well, what people mean is that it's got something called cork taint. And it's also known as TCA, which stands for its really long formal name. Are you ready to geek out, Lisa?
Yes.
It's called 2,4,6-trichloroanisole. So that's why we call it
trichloroanisole.
for short.
I like this. That's a good new
trichloroanisole.
Word. 2,4,6.
And that is a bacteria that can occur in the cork. It can also happen in this wine cellar too, but most frequently it develops in the cork as it reacts to the gases and substances in the wine. Modern cork producers have pretty well eradicated it. It's a very small percentage of corks that go bad, but when they do, they interact with the wine, and the wine will develop kind of nasty aromas, things that smell like a musty, damp basement or wet newspapers or a wet, dirty dog, And let's face it, our noses are safeguards, aren't they? That's why our nose will tell us, oh, don't eat that because it smells like it's going bad. Or don't buy that old chair because it smells musty and nasty. So our nose is telling us this wine has been spoiled. It's unfortunately not good anymore. And it can happen to wines in all price points and sometimes very expensive wines.
And so understand that too when you're cooking, like you were saying, when things turn into vinegar that you've had it next to your, oven for 10 years and you don't want to do that. Yeah, people think you can, but I see people do that with vinegar, and I'm like, you're heating the vinegar. That's going to change. Anything you put near heat is going to change. Chef Jeremy, he always teaches us to put things into the fridge because it prevents osmosis. And the conversations we've had with you over time, it's like it seems the same way with wine is prevent osmosis. Keep it cool. prevent that. It's the osmosis thing is really about oxygen. Oxygen gives life and it taketh away. So thank you so much for the information on that. But yeah, we got to watch our oxygen. So it's interesting how it works, isn't it? But
it's
everybody
good
again,
and it's bad. Friend and
yeah.
foe.
Yeah, well, that's life, man. That's how it works. Everyone, northwindswineconsulting.com, especially if you're a winery, a restaurant, anybody in the hospitality industry, in the education world that connects with wine. That's a great place to go to get some extra knowledge. And I know Hilarie teaches people, so northwindswineconsulting.com. And also go to blendradioandtv.com, and you'll find Hilarie in our expert department, and you can read her articles on wine tasting and wines, and also about all the destinations she goes to. I mean, you've gone to Bandol to, I can't say it, Chateauneuf. I can't say it. I need help with that. Chateauneuf-du-Pape. I had it halfway. Nancy's got it down. Nancy can say it now. She walks around saying that all day long. So, that's her thing. But anyway, thank you so much
I'm
for
glad
the
to hear
education
it.
as always. And everyone, again, also Hilarie's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at North Winds Wine. Thanks so much.
Thank you.